All right, so I'm really glad to see you guys today. So I had some questions and interest about small group ministry. I think there's a couple of people, maybe a few people in the congregation who have already done small group ministry kinds of things in other congregations that they've been a part of. And small group ministry goes by many names. It can go by small group ministry, it can go by covenant groups or chalice groups, and sometimes there's other names for it as well. And I thought for our purposes, we might just go ahead and call it covenant groups. So without getting into everything that there is to talk about with covenant groups, I will start with saying that the purpose of this is to be a small group opportunity for about 8 to 10, can be a little bit less. It's really not very effective if it gets to be much more than 10 people. It's an intentional opportunity to be together and to reflect together on different spiritual themes. And so the original purposes of small group ministry, when it was designed and implemented in our Unitarian Universalist congregations about 12 years ago or so, was to focus on intimacy in our relationships with ourselves and each other, ultimacy, our relationship with that which is greater than we are, and growth as opportunities not only to practice ministering to each other and developing new skills in terms of facilitation and sharing, but also to help us dive a little bit more deeply into different spiritual themes and questions that we might be interested in and that we don't always have the opportunity to talk with others about. It's pretty uncommon that we would walk up to even anybody at coffee hour and be like, so what do you think about death? What happens after that? It might be a little off-putting to people if you start asking questions like that. But in this kind of a setting where you have agreed to be together and to explore some of these questions, it can be a really good opportunity just to have those conversations and get some insights from other people. So let's see here. 3 agreements between the groups and the congregation as a whole that are suggested are to abide by a set of relationship ground rules called a covenant, to welcome new members to the group and to the program overall, keeping the groups open to new people and new ideas. And that would be especially important if this were to exceed our 1-year hope that we will even get through. And then another important part of the small group ministry model as it was designed was to have a service component to it. And at this point in time, I'm not really sure how much I want to focus on that, given the limitations around being able to gather and do things together. But if a group is motivated and interested in offering something back to the congregation or to the world, and willing to figure out a way to do that safely, that's definitely a possibility. Small group ministry is an opportunity for us to seek connections as part of an intimate, accepting community in which we are lifted out of the everyday to reflect on and deepen our spiritual and ethical journey. It is not a prayer group, it is not a therapy group, and it is not exactly a discussion group either. It both is and it is not. It's not informal like a discussion group can be. It's more structured and it's intentional. And the goal of the group is to allow the members to grow together as a group to some extent, and then to also grow spiritually within themselves and in relationship with the church. And it's an opportunity to share personal stories. One of the keys for the covenant groups is having a covenant. And sometimes they look something like this, and I'll just read off a list of about 10 things for a sample covenant. Respect the right to pass. That is that you can opt not to speak or participate in any part of the meeting. Although I would really encourage people not to do that extensively because it limits the amount of sharing that other people are willing to engage in. To listen deeply and respectfully. Have one person speak at a time. Don't interrupt unless it's for a process comment, like "I can't hear you," or "Please explain that term." Start and end on time. Share the privilege and responsibility of helping the group to function well. Share the time fairly. Respect confidentiality. What is said in the group stays in the group. Speak about your own experience using I statements. Don't give advice. We're not here to fix anyone. And make our best effort to attend each meeting or have a clear expectation about what attendance should look like. And if something doesn't suit you, to share about that. Session plans serve as a guide, a structure for the conversation that you guys would have together in one of these groups. They always start with an opening reading and a chalice lighting that introduces the topic but doesn't really guide it, kind of just opens it up like this is the thing that we're going to be talking about. That's followed by a check-in during which each person briefly shares about such questions sometimes as what's on your mind today, or how is it with your spirit. It should be kept to about 1 to 2 minutes and sharing something that's significant or meaningful to you. Could be thoughts, feelings, insights, something that happened since the last time that you met. And this is an important time. Check-in sounds like it can be something that you can just blow off, but it's an important time as an opportunity for the group to get to connect for the first time together and at the beginning of each session. One group described it this way: "This is a chance to speak from your heart and your life without interruption or response. Give one another your thoughtful silence and undivided attention. What you share may come from the current state of your physical or spiritual health, joys or concerns about loved ones, or concerns or excitement about what is happening in your life. The focus of the sharing is on how those activities or situations affect your feelings and thoughts." So following the check-in, there's a time for focus on the theme of the meeting with sharing from personal stories guided by questions in the session plan. And I've seen this done 2 ways. One is with the quotes or a paragraph or something about that sort of opens the topic a little bit more and allowing people to respond to that, and then going on to the questions and allowing people to respond to that, or just doing the quotes or introduction and the questions all together. It's important though, however a group decides to do these, that every participant practices deep listening. It allows each person to share from their story without interruption or anticipating responses from ourselves. Everybody gets the opportunity to share once before opening the floor to crosstalk. And people should speak using I statements about their thoughts, feelings, experiences, realizations, or resonances about the prompts or something related to the theme. Following all this conversation, which is the bulk of the session, there's a checkout, which gives every participant the opportunity to say how the session was for them. Some groups have called this section something like likes and wishes. If there was something that they really appreciated or that they really wish had been included but wasn't. Although my practice when I've done small group ministry in the past is that if there's something about the theme that really strikes you that you want to speak of or to that's not included in any of the other material that's provided for in the session, that's completely welcome. It also allows people sort of the opportunity to have a debriefing. I find that checkout is probably one of the hardest parts of doing this because it always feels a little awkward. We don't usually make space for this in other areas of our lives, but it gives people a chance to sort of process a little bit before they return back to their regular lives. And I think that that can be helpful even now in our Zoom time, as much as it would be in our actual lived lives if we were doing this at the church or something like that. And then following the checkout is a closing reading and chalice extinguishing. Let's see here. And so I had a sample and I forgot where I put it. Oh, here it is. So as an example, we would do a refresher of the covenant reading. This particular session is about why are you a Unitarian Universalist? And so it starts with this chalice lighting by Adam Robersmith. Consider what is coming and plan for it as best you can, but live in the present moment. Value everyone because each person matters right now. When we bring our children, our youth, our young adults, our midlife adults, and our elders all into one community, one body of faith, we embody the hopes and dreams of many, many people who have gone on before us. We become a religious community bound by love. We become a place that can support each in their quest for meaning and truth. We no longer wait for our young people to become the church of the future. We all become the church of the present. So then there would be a check-in. They have one reading from Reverend Gary Smith. I believe we have a home. We have a spiritual tent. We have sanctuaries. We have sacred spaces that are large enough to hold those who hunger for something more in this lifetime. I believe that we have a message that speaks right to the deepest places of the human spirit as it cries out in its hunger and thirst. I believe that Unitarian Universalism and places like your congregations and mine are places where dreams have become realities for people, where they have been fed, where they have been given living waters. And so then the questions that you would be invited to reflect on or consider: why did you become a UU? What do you need from the church? Is the church responding to your needs? If not, what is missing? What characteristics do you look for in a minister? Be gentle on that one, guys. What do you appreciate in sermons? What values represented by UUCTS are particularly aligned with your own values? And then there would be a checkout, and then the closing reading. A human response to places that open the spirit is deeper and older than any religion. And then the chalice would be extinguished. So does anyone have any questions? Yes, Mark.
Excuse me, where does the plan come from? Like the flow you just went through?
So thankfully, chalice groups have been around, covenant groups have been around for a long time, and there are lots of them available on the internet in different places. And my hope is that we will set up some worship themes over the course of the year, and each month we'll have a theme to match it. So like in August, we've sort of been focusing on the spiritual theme of imagination. And then the session would match that, and I would try to find something that matches it. And so they're already pre-set up, but we could tweak them if we wanted to.
And there's a designated facilitator for each chalice group. So from week to week, the same person facilitates, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, at least ideally. Some groups may, you know, like if we just did if we had a group where everybody felt like they would be a confident facilitator, You know, it would also be fine to rotate that and make sure that just, you know, the person is adequately prepared. Yeah. But usually it's nice to just have a point person. They can send out, or I know you guys have been trying to schedule meetings so that they're at a set time. So scheduling reminders wouldn't necessarily be as important as they could be in other situations, but it's still helpful to get a reminder. Hey, don't forget, we've got a meeting tomorrow at 6:15 or whatever.
That helps.
Yeah.
How
So,
often do groups typically meet?
usually monthly. Yeah, usually monthly. Some groups have met as often as every 3 weeks. But with the transition to worship themes, it just works out a lot easier just to do once a month. In general, I found that more often than that is very time consuming for people. They don't have the mental or physical space to be able to do them every 2 weeks. It's just too much. And this is a good way. I did a small group ministry, not a small group ministry, a spiritual direction training for groups once. And in that training, they talked about how spiritual direction really works best monthly because it gives an opportunity for life to happen and for you to process that a little bit between the meetings. Otherwise, it's too much and you don't have enough time to actually notice what's going on and to reflect on it in a helpful way. Joe.
Two things. Is the information you just given so far, which apparently was an outline, is that something that we could have sent to or found online so we could review?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, also, and this is also being recorded, so it will be available for review as a video.
Reverend Kristina,
yes.
May I share that what was it called? What was that called? That online, if you look up covenant groups in the UUA directory, you will find the resources of the outline for this, and it comes out of Reverend Thandeka's, which I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Thandeka.
Yeah, Thandeka. It comes out of her workshop, and there are various versions around, as you mentioned already. But that one from her through the What Moves Us, I think is her workshop title. It really does almost as good a job as you did.
Well, thank you. That's quite a compliment.
I have a question.
Yes.
Or I'm curious as to what people hope to experience through participating in a covenant group. I don't know if, I mean, for example, like I'm thinking I would like this to be an opportunity, being a part of that, it would be an opportunity for us to discuss amongst each other about what it is that makes us, or what we believe draws us to the beliefs of the UU Church, how we define them, how we participate in those, how we act on them. And it's something that with regular services, and we'll go to church and maybe a little bit in coffee hour afterward, but not because we're more socializing. We haven't had a lot of opportunities to really bond together, to talk about what joins us together coming into the church and what kind of visions we personally want to share going forward. People that participate in the activities or on the committees and stuff, we do that kind of conversation in passing. And then those people that are good friends, when we have coffee or go out for dinner, we'll have conversations like that over the table. But in terms of getting everybody together, or smaller groups together within the congregation to share why we come together, I think is going to be a wonderful opportunity. I know other churches I've been to have had covenant groups. I haven't participated because I've been too busy, but I don't know how everybody else here sees that. And I think that's something that it might be a good idea to say, what do you hope to experience in participating in a group like this?
So usually the primary attraction is connection. And one of the things that can be really great about doing covenant groups is that it does break up some of that natural instinct of like, I gravitate toward the people that I know the best, or I gravitate, like at coffee hour. I know I served on a bunch of different committees, and like coffee hour for me was about like tracking down all the people I needed to talk with while they were all present right at the same time. And so I'm not having any conversations like this.
Or coffee,
and then,
right?
right. And then, so then having these groups, it's actually time set apart to have intentional conversations about something that you might not otherwise have that conversation about. And I think that there's sort of an underlying assumption of sort of talking about sort of maybe that part of how talking about this subject is part of your journey with Unitarian Universalism. Maybe it's something that drew you to it, or something that you want to explore now that you've been around for a little bit and you don't really understand. But I also think that that can be a good question to ask during the groups, is just like, and so thinking about this subject, how does it play into your journey with Unitarian Universalism? You know, maybe it hasn't entered your journey yet. Maybe, again, like this is what drew you to the church or whatever. And so I think that can be a really good thing to ask people to focus on, but not necessarily all the time, because I don't want people to feel limited by that question either, if that makes sense.
I was wondering what other people thought here that are here now as to why they might be interested in participating.
Well,
I
I participated in a covenant group many years ago when I lived in the Chicago area. And I don't remember, there was a specific book that was used to guide the group. And I think that experience and what I would be looking for is basically what you said, connection. And our congregation has many wonderful activities that can be done through Zoom and interest groups and intellectual stimulation. And it's really, this congregation has really learned how to, I mean, they really do that very well. And there's a lot of social action activity. Of course, it's harder now, but I haven't seen as much that was committed to finding ways to help people connect with one another outside of those exterior activities. And that's truly what I'm looking for. To me, that builds community. It builds relationships. It builds a sense of family. And when it comes down to it, I don't know that I have proof of this, but I think when we're trying to attract other people into our space to participate with us, I think that ultimately is what attracts people, is feeling like this is a community that is connected and has personal connections, and I want to be a part of that. It becomes a vortex that people get attracted to. So that's kind of really what I'm looking for more, is making that kind of connection.
I think we do have a group that comes close to this, and that would be the mindfulness meditation group. But the mindfulness meditation group is not UU. What I find in my experience with chalice groups, covenant groups, is that you're creating a UU spiritual space. You're actually doing the chalice. You're using the UU or humanist readings. You're focusing in on a spiritual little journey, perhaps, during that moment, that you all have questions around this particular topic, for each of us to ponder either before the meeting comes in, or even a whole month ahead of time. One group I was in was facilitated by a retired PhD economist going to divinity school. And she did very well at designing her own questions and getting us to the point in a short time. But then we've had other groups where we focused on other things. But it's still, it's that combination of ritual, UU, based in UU values, calling on the sources, calling on the principles, having you really examine in a trusting space, one that you're agreeing that this is within my faith, this is within what we define as our UUism, helps you to develop a UU identity. And that's what none of our groups do.
Joe?
I came mainly to explore and understand more fully the format, because I had, impressions secondhand of how covenant groups operated. My concern personally is the limits I have on my time and wherewithal to make a commitment. And in my 25 plus year UU association, what I have enjoyed is things like the Build Your Own Theology class, facilitating several times in different congregations, building the story of your life, a spiritual autobiography class. One time, a dream class based on someone's book, which was fascinating. All of which I thought, in the year I've been with Tarpon here, is that I would like to, at some point, facilitate or share the facilitation of such groups. And I'm thinking of my, would I have the time, or even one of those, plus spiritual autobiography or one of these others. And because I seem to have difficulty between health problems, doing just the Zoom coffee hour so it's that's my biggest quandary, is where to invest my time and energy for my personal benefit and the shared community. But it just,
I think that's fair. What I am thinking about is doing a pilot session next week for August, and then doing another pilot session in September, and then allowing training sort of facilitators for a group, and then doing it October through May. So it will be for about 8 months. And it's once a month. That's what I'm thinking about. So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but I just wanted to throw that out there in terms of what we were looking at.
So very much. So the first 2 months would be piloting as not individually making a commitment, but
Right.
for the other 8 months of your year with our congregation contractually, that makes sense.
And to come to as many as you can, understanding that things happen and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things is that it can impact group dynamics when people are coming in and out. And so having the consistency as best as possible is helpful for the group. But that's what I was thinking of, like October through May, and then just seeing how it goes. I know when we first started doing this in my home congregation, people were not willing to give up their small group ministries, and they just kept meeting. I mean, some of them met for years. And so that's prompted some groups to sort of, and congregations to sort of reformat or rethink about what they're doing in their groups and how to change things up a little bit. Because you also don't want the group just to get kind of, you want to have people in new formations to get to know each other. But yeah, I was thinking at this point in time, just allowing people to get to experience it and then see if they would be willing to commit to doing it for October through May.
What I like about it is it's an experience. I mean, an experiment. We don't know how it will go over and if it will stick, but
Yeah.
let's see. We may love it or we may say,
Yeah.
try
And
something
both
else.
things are possible. Yeah. This was one of my favorite experiences in my home congregation. I love doing it. I was on the steering committee. I helped develop sessions, and there are people that I'm still friends with from my home congregation that I left like 8 years ago that I still feel this really tight connection with because I was in a small group with them. I got a lot out of it. And so I kind of feel like it's the gift that keeps on giving if I can keep offering it to people.
What I think I'm hearing, and I guess I'm taking it from your use of the word intentional conversations, is we've all read the principles. We listen to the same sermons most of the time. And yet we work on our service projects and do our committee work. And it's like the thread running through it is we assume we all sort of have the same grounding. And I think your intentional conversations are trying to move beyond assuming we know why we're all here to being clearer about it.
Yes. Yes, very much. Yeah.
Well, our objective for tonight was to understand what she's talking about. And I'm asking, do you think we've met that objective tonight?
Okay.
So you can decide if you want to come to one of the pilots.
Yeah. And like I said, the pilots are just going to be, all I'm asking for people to commit to is to staying through the session. Nothing after that. Okay.
Yeah, I think it sounds good.
Yeah,
Great.
it's a good idea.